You're listening to the Raw Honeys Podcast, the place to be real, be love, and befriend. Join Chelsea Fine, Heather Hildenbrand, and me, Amanda Axel. We're real friends who aren't afraid to talk about the raw truth of real life. If you're looking for a group of girlfriends who will support and encourage you when the going gets tough, this is the place to be. Pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and enjoy the show. Hey honeys, thanks for tuning in to today's show. This is Heather Hildenbrand and I'm here with Chelsea Fine and Amanda Axel to talk to you about letting go. Because the truth is, no matter how many meditations you do or mantras you repeat, no matter how much time you spend cultivating a great attitude and a good headspace, there will always be something unexpected to come along and knock you off your balance or throw you for a loop. So what do you do when that happens? So for me, I know I just used to react. And initially, in the moment, I still do react, for sure. But in the moments or hours or days that follow, as we catch our breath, I think the real key for bouncing back from those times or navigating through them better and better each time lies in whether we choose to stop reacting and start proacting. So meaning you get to choose how you feel and what you do next. You get to choose how you frame what's happened in your own mind. Was it positive or negative? Can you see the growth? Can you get your feet under you again so you can move through it, or do you get stuck? Collectively and individually, I'd say the three of us have had our share of being blindsided by various circumstances. So today we want to put our mouths where our brand is, and we want to get raw and real about how we handle all those things that we can't control. So I'm going to start with Chelsea and pick on her first. So tell me a time that you were blindsided by outside circumstances and maybe let it really toss you around a lot.
Oh, well, I feel like I'm blindsided all the time by circumstances. I'm sure we all feel that way.
And that is life, yes.
Yeah. But I guess as far as like really significant, situation, a handful of years ago, I fell into a pretty heavy depression, and it totally overwhelmed me. But it was triggered by a series of uncontrollable events in my life. So I just because of some weird coincidences and timing, I had my four closest friends. I kind of lost them all at the same time, in the sense where they moved far away, or there was some other like business thing going on where we weren't going to be able to see each other very much. So I lost a bunch of my friends all within a matter of 2 or 3 months. And in that same 2 or 3 month time period, I had three really close people to me pass away. And all three of those deaths were very sudden, and I think perhaps because of how quickly all of those things happened, like a short period of time, I don't think I knew or even allowed myself to process any of it in like any kind of a healthy way. Instead, I started internalizing it. I think I started to kind of feel really sorry for myself. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I felt very lonely. I felt very empty, mostly because I was grieving the loss of some of my friends who passed away, but I didn't have my close friends here to grieve with or to lean on. I have plenty of family and friends though. Like I just was having trouble seeing all that I had in that season. I was a little bit consumed with what I did not have. And it also, these things also happened at a time when my career was very successful and amazing. And we love that. We work really hard so that our careers can flourish. But with success comes lots of commitment and you got to stay on top of things, and lots of stress actually tends to come with success. So it was just like it was like just a perfect storm of woe is me, like it was just became a giant pity party for me. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with recognizing and acknowledging where we feel alone or where we feel that we have lost something. I think that's actually very important to do, but I wasn't doing it in a healthy way. I was letting myself sink into a deep depression, and I was repeating to myself that everything bad happens to me and I've lost all these things and I have no one to help me heal. Like I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it at all. And it did not get better with that kind of mind state. I just sank deeper and deeper into this pit of despair. and, and then when I got to the bottom of the pit, I made myself comfortable and I set up camp and I was like, okay, this is where I'm going to be. I wallowed. I gained a lot of weight. I stopped taking care of myself mentally, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, because I wanted to feel crappy. I wanted to really pity myself and I wanted to look pitiful and feel pitiful. Yeah, it was dark. It was dark. I did not handle that well, I don't think.
And in something like that, I feel like there comes a point where, yeah, you want to feel that way. Like it's just a pattern that's going on so long, or it is harder to get out of it. It's easier to stay in it. So like your brain just is like, let's just keep feeling like that, even though it feels shitty. You're like, I want to feel shitty. Like that sounds crazy, but it's true.
Well, you get good at feeling shitty.
Yeah.
Like it was the one thing in my life that I was being successful at was feeling shitty about myself, about my circumstance, about my life. Like I was failing at everything else, like showing up on time places and putting effort into my hygiene or something like, but I was really good at being miserable, I was like, so yeah, you're right. We get there. We want to stay.
We do. It's because it's easier. It's like our body recognizes it's a pattern that it recognizes and it just wants to stay in what's comfortable. I think we've all gone through stuff where like it's harder to break out of it. It's more comfortable to just stay in it, even though staying in it isn't enjoyable.
Right. Yeah, it's part of our human condition a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So we do have to like make a decision, I think, fight out of it, because it is a fight sometimes when you let it go on that long. It's a fight.
Oh, right? It's absolutely a fight. It's a fight where you're missing fingernails and you're in the dark, and it's not just boxing your way out. You're climbing out of a pit. And I always like kind of envision like a well, like a Snow White kind of deep well with like slime and muck all over the walls, and it's just pitch black in there, and I'm like trying to climb up and there's rats and bugs everywhere. That's the kind of place that I built for myself internally and got comfortable in. So yeah, you're right. It is, you have to fight to get out of a deep dark well like that, for sure.
So what did you do? How did you get from there to here?
I tried to fight as best as I knew how at that time in my life. As far as I did a lot of Googling and trying to get out of depression, because I think maybe my first mistake in coping with these things was that I lumped them all together into this place of depression. Like I labeled it depression, right? But then it allowed me to deceive myself into thinking that I had only one problem to deal with, and that was my depression. That was my lack of contentment, happiness, and ability to enjoy life. So I thought of it as just a one problem, as opposed to thinking about it as, hey, I've had several important things come along and cause a little bit of pain and disruption, and I should pay attention to each of those individually. So what I mostly did was I was trying to exercise every day. I was making lists, gratitude lists every night. Lots of just those little practices. But I think I had just let myself stay there for so long before I started doing those things that I really do think my brain chemistry was already jeopardized by the time I decided to try and bring a little bit of sunshine back to my life. Like I think my brain chemistry was already a little bit compromised in the sense where, I wasn't taking care of myself. So trying to get back to any kind of balance was way harder than anything I remembered ever trying before. So, what I ended up doing, because I fought like in this sense that we're talking about for 8 months, and I wasn't getting better in my, as far as my standards. And I was still crying in a heap of dirty laundry in my closet, like every day, just because. um, and so my husband came home and told me he read about this plant medicine called iboga, that it's a very powerful hallucinogen, but it resets a lot of things in your brain. So it treats and I guess in theory cures depression, PTSD, drug addiction, all these things that kind of totally take over our brain and change who we are and our capabilities. So I went down to Mexico and I checked into a clinic with my husband and I took this plant medicine, and it was a wild trip and it was beautiful and it was the most life-changing experience I will probably ever have. And it was overwhelming and daunting and a little scary because I'd never done anything like that before. But it was incredible. It was incredible. It was like I went on this hallucinogenic journey for a couple days, and then I woke up happy. I woke up healed. Like I woke up with my priorities and my perspectives in a healthy place. I woke up and all I could see were all the things I had. The things that I did not have were never mine to begin with. Like my perspective, still to this day, just completely changed. And instead of whining and feeling sorry for myself about what I had lost, I instead began to focus on how grateful I am for what time I got to have with all of those people, or what blessings those were. So yeah, plant medicine, that was my way out of that deep, dark pit of despair.
It's amazing. And I've heard you tell this story so many times, and I'm like on the edge of my seat every time. It's such a cool story. I love it so much. So I'm like just sitting there listening, like it's new information. My eyes are all wide. I'm like, this is so cool. I love it. I love it so much that that's the story. And that really, when I remember the first time you told me about it, and I went off to research it too and find out what's iboga. What is she talking about? And
right?
If you guys haven't heard of it or researched it, you should, because it is amazing and sadly not legal in our country. But it is in our neighboring countries. And so you have to take a trip, but it was just,
it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it, even if you're not really struggling with a really heavy depression or PTSD or drug addiction. I believe that it's worth it if anything is going on in your life where you don't feel like you have an anchor in yourself, because really that's what it did. It cleaned up my brain, and it does, just for the scientific aspect of things, what it does is, from what I understand, is kind of recalibrate your brain chemistry so that you kind of get a reset button on your brain. So any kind of compulsive patterns of behavior or any of these like neural paths that we've created that are unhealthy, it kind of goes and undoes them. It's kind of like a really intense way to press reset on your perspective of not just the world, but your place within the world. So I strongly recommend people look into it, at least just to know that something like that is out there. And it's called iboga. It's spelled IBOGA. Little commercial there for iboga.
Yeah, right? That's our plug. One of many, I'm sure, because we're going to probably talk about this a lot throughout the course of this podcast. It's amazing. Okay, so there's so much more that we can talk about that, but we just want to hear first, I think, about like struggles from all of us and like things that really knocked us down, because there's more we can talk about with iboga and there's more we can talk about with what I know of your story, but I want to get to all this first, and we're going to circle back because the rest of the story I feel like is more about, coping better going forward, which we're going to get to. So we will come back. Amanda, tell me a time you felt like, I don't know, like you were blindsided or just got knocked over by something.
Yeah, so I think the biggest time in my life was in 2010, where literally like the sky was falling. I was in a job where I was very overwhelmed and I wasn't getting help, so I quit. And the day before I was supposed to start my new job, I got a call that my dad's liver was failing. And it was also just a few months before I was going to get married. And my dad and I were not really close at that time because of I wanted him and my stepdad to walk me down the aisle, so there was some conflict there, And so when my stepmom called, I ignored her call because I thought she was just calling to, talk about that. So I go to this new job. I hate it because it's not nearly as busy as my last job, ironically. And my dad's condition is getting worse. So luckily, I was able to quit that second job, go back to my previous job. The next day, I flew out to Texas to see my dad for the last time. I hadn't seen my dad in 7 years at that time. Had to come home. It was a month before my wedding, and he died the day before my bachelorette party. And I just remember. I mean, it was like when I found out that he had passed, that was the most excruciating moment of my life. I'm sorry.
This is the raw part.
This
Don't
is
be
the raw
sorry.
part.
Yeah.
It really was like the most pain I've ever felt in my entire life because I think anybody who's lost a parent, and I can say this because, my dad and I were so close when I was young and not, close for the latter part of the time that he was in my life. Regardless, I think of your relationship, when your parent dies, it's like a piece of you is gone. It's really weird to explain, and it's like it can never come back, And obviously that was so awful, and I immediately, the way I dealt with that was I called all of my friends. I just wanted to be totally surrounded and insulated by my friends that night.
Yeah.
But the next day, I have my bachelorette party. You know what I mean? Like I have like all these girls who were like taking me to dinner and dancing and all this stuff, and it's like, what do? I have my friend coming in. We're staying at a hotel, doing the whole thing. I got a spray tan that day because I wanted to look good, like this is all in advance. Yeah. And I just remember, like, I did not allow myself to cry that entire day because everybody in my family was calling me and saying, your dad would want you to enjoy this day. Your dad would want you to have fun, all this stuff. So I had to hold it in. I had to totally hold it together that very next day and be on and enjoy my life, this special kind of moment in my life, I guess. And I remember, obviously I was drinking. And I didn't break down until I was in the bathroom, talking to this girl in line at the bathroom. There was a whole line, and I just
Did you even know her?
No, I didn't know her.
Stranger, yeah.
And I was with one of my other friends. She'd taken me, and I just told her, like, my dad died yesterday, and it was the weirdest thing. Like, it was almost like I was watching that moment. Like, this poor girl, like who I'm talking to, must have been like, wow, that's not what I was expecting you to say, It's like,
no, but it is amazing how many times I feel like those types of conversations happen in line for the bathroom when you're out, people been drinking. That's when it all comes out, guys.
Yes.
That's pretty normal, I think.
But then it doesn't stop there. So this is 2 weeks before my wedding, right? When my dad passes. So I have to, I'm grieving, I'm doing the whole thing. I'm trying to prepare for my wedding. I've just had this job fiasco. I'm trying to figure out my life. I'm about to marry somebody, all this stuff. And so we get married. And at the same time we get married, my husband gets a new job. It's a government contractor job. And it's so great. We're super excited. He's got a week off, so we're going to go on our cruise. We're going to come back. He's going to start his new job, make more money, all this stuff, And then come to find out, a few days before we left on our honeymoon, his security clearance did not come through. And so even though he had quit his job, he wasn't able to start this new job. They basically said, sorry,
Whoa.
And so then we had to go on our honeymoon and pretend like everything was great and that we weren't worried about money, because at this point we bought a house, all that stuff. We were paying, we've got this, honeymoon, this cruise, which costs thousands of dollars. Those of you who go on cruises, we're like trying to figure out, oh my God, like how long is this going to last? We're trying to be hopeful. And then, eventually 2 months later, he was able to get a job, which was great. And then that fall, his parents announced that they were getting divorced. And it was just like, literally this all happened in like 6 months. But what's so crazy is, I feel like when I look back, it it almost became like a joke, like, oh, what else can the world throw at us?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like because it was at that point where, like, I remember, when he was unemployed, I've been unemployed for a little bit, and I was just thinking, you know what, like, we might lose everything. We might lose the house, we might lose the cars, we might have to go live with my parents because his parents are getting divorced. You know what I mean? Like, we might have to do stuff like this. We might lose it all. And I just remember thinking, like, if we lose it all, it's gonna be okay because we'll just get it back. Like, at that point, you're just like, you're just waiting.
Yeah.
But I really wasn't deterred by it, and I think that I don't know. I honestly don't even know how I got through that, but I was strong because I felt like I had to be strong, especially like for my husband at that time. That was so hard on him. And it's like, oh yeah, Amanda, but you had just lost your dad and you're grieving and all of da 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 da. But I was really, I don't want to say fortunate, but I had a really bad loss in my childhood. My brother passed away when we were kids, and that was another thing. Like, when you're a little kid and the person who's closest to you in the world passes away, it changes you.
Sure.
But I did have the fortune, and actually it was funny because you guys were mentioning something like this earlier about the strength of a mother, like kind of holding it together for your kids, in front of your kids. And I was fortunate that at that time, because at that time, it was also like the sky was falling. My brother passed away a few months later. My parents announced their divorce. A few months after that, we moved across the country with my mom's new boyfriend. It was crazy.
Wow, yeah.
But my mom was so strong, and she grieved so well. And I think because of going through that experience as a kid and being able to watch her example of how she turned poison into medicine, because later, she ended up becoming a nurse in the pediatric field. And so her job is to help sick children.
Yeah.
She's there for mothers that are like struggling with children who have, terminal diseases too, And so, just kind of watching her go through that and like not letting it get her down, not letting it end her life, even though, as a mother, anybody who's listening who's lost a child, knows. I mean, I don't know even, but like, that's probably the most devastating loss you can ever experience, way more than being a parent. I can even imagine that the pain that I felt from losing my dad is like a million times worse, losing a child. I can't even go there. But anyway, but I think that because of having that example, losing someone very close to me later in my life kind of prepared me in that whole way. Because I went through the whole thing about what is life? What is death? What is our purpose? Where do we go when we die? Blah, 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 blah. I went through all that at a young age. So it's like embedded in me. You know what I mean? in those formative years, it almost becomes second nature to know how to grieve when you have to do it that hard and that early, I think. So,
well, it's another example of, I think what a lot of times this stuff comes down to is how you frame it. Because you were talking about your mom and about how losing a child and how that's like the worst, maybe the worst pain somebody can feel, but then she became a nurse, a pediatric nurse, and now she helps people through it. And holy shit, dude. Like, I know pediatric nurses or NICU nurses who help people through that haven't had that loss, and it's still super hard to do. So to add that to it is like, oh my God, amazing.
Yeah, very.
But I've met parents who've lost children who went the complete opposite direction and are super bitter, and they wear their pain on their sleeve like a badge of honor, and not in a good way. And, I think it all comes down to, for all this stuff, how you frame it in your mind and how quickly you get to a place mentally where you can frame it consciously. Because all these things we're talking about are things that for a little while you just react. It happens, you react, it happens, you react. Especially with you, where you're talking, and Chelsea, both of you guys, where you're talking about like it was boom, 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 things happening. It wasn't one thing. It wasn't even 3 or 4 things. I mean, it was a lot of things in a short amount of time. So you go into reaction mode, And so how quickly do you come out of that into the like we called it a pro action mode, where you go, okay, what am I going to think of this? What am I going to make this mean? And like, because you went through that with your brother at a young age, now when it happened with your dad, you already sort of know what it means to you.
Yes.
And so you can frame it in a way that I think really helps get your feet under you quicker, right? Do you
Absolutely.
think so?
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I hate to say, fortunately, this happened to me because I would do anything to have my brother back. But in the sense that, like, I'm going to lose someone again. And everybody who's listening, everybody on this call is going to lose someone if they haven't. They're going to lose someone again if they have. You know, it's just, that's life. Sorry, that's what we signed up for. You know what I mean? When we came here, in a way, you know? And so yeah, so in a way, I'm so grateful for that experience, because I don't want to lose anybody I love, obviously. But I know that if I do, I know that it will not end me. I know I will not lose my life. Because you're right, like, you know, my dad went a totally different way. And if I had stayed with him, you know, maybe my life would have ended up completely different by watching his example of grief. You know?
Yeah, that's interesting that you said that, because we haven't really talked about the people around us and what they see about our reaction versus proaction. And not that that should put more pressure on us necessarily. I don't think that it should. I think that, and this actually reminds me of something you said earlier. One of you guys said about your mom. Amanda, you said your mom, she was so strong. And I want to clarify what that means, at least for us, and I think for your mom too, is that that doesn't mean she never showed you her processing, I'm sure. And
right.
Like, I think there's this stigma sometimes that strong means that when stuff happens you can't control, that you need to like man up or whatever they say, and like, you know, not cry or not react, or, you know, let it roll right off you. And I think we can all agree that even now, especially now, after we've had some things happen, that I think we've all come a long way. And like, you know, now when stuff happens that we can't control or that we don't see coming, we react better. We get our feet under us faster. And we know that that's because we've learned how to process better, and that strength doesn't mean not crying. Like, right. Chelsea, the thing that I wanted to come back to with the Iboga, and like in the middle of Iboga, what Iboga made you do to get where you were when you came out of it, was that it made you face it. Every single one of those things that caused you pain, it made you face them, and it made you process through them. And right? I mean, that's how we get better.
Yeah. Had to look right at the monster.
Yeah, and feel it, right? And so strength is not avoiding those things. We've learned the hard way.
Strength is not being afraid of the monster. Strength is knowing that you're gonna go get face to face with the pain, and you're not afraid for the hurt that might follow. But side note, in my personal experience, these things to process were painful for me, but not nearly as painful or scary as I thought they were going to be. Like, I really found out what I was made of. Like, I really realized that I am much stronger than I gave myself credit for, you know, but I was just avoiding, right? What about you though, Heather? You've had stuff. Like,
well, I felt like maybe it was, I was like, since I'm emceeing today, I get to play hooky for a second, and I was avoiding because I felt like it was really heavy. We have had these heavy things happen, and I didn't know if I didn't want to add to it, but I will. Yeah, I guess the thing that threw me most for a loop in my life was in 2009, I found out that my father was guilty of sexually abusing two of the children in our family, not just, like my extended family too, cousins, aunts, uncles. And I just say that because I won't say who, because that's not my story to tell. But two of the children, and it was devastating. And it was worse than someone dying. And I know because I've had that too.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. It was the most horrible thing that had ever happened to those people and to our whole family, and then to me, because it was such a disgusting thing to face. And then on top of that, I had to really come to terms with the fact that I didn't know this man who I thought I knew, who was my dad. It was a whole identity crisis. It was by far completely the worst, most traumatic thing that's ever happened, and that ever will happen, really, because there were so many layers to it and everything, and our family fell apart. Our family wasn't healthy before that, let's be clear. So we needed to fall apart. So in some ways, like, amazing things came out of it because we needed to fall apart, but we fell apart, and so there was no support. We couldn't support each other because nobody was healthy enough to do that. They weren't healthy enough to support themselves, so they couldn't. And so there was no support, and I felt so alone and so overwhelmed and lost and depressed. And I think, like, it was kind of like what you said, Chelsea, about the depression, that you labeled it, I'm depressed. So now I have this one problem of depression to work out. And I wallowed in that one thing, right? It's easier to stay down once you're down. And it's easier to just, I pictured my brain like this ticker, like this news ticker of thoughts going across it every day. And it's so much easier to let the ticker play than to try to control what the ticker is playing.
Oh, definitely.
Right? I mean, that's every day. That's any day, right? So when it's something like emotionally draining and crushing like that, definitely you're just like, I'm going to let it play, and I'm going to let it make me feel however it makes me feel. And it just got really dark. And so for me, I didn't have plant medicine, and I wish I did, but I didn't. So I did what Chelsea did, but I did it the slow way, because I didn't want to take medicine. I tried antidepressants and they made it worse. And I believe it's partly because I believe it's a lot of reasons. I believe, like, taking chemicals, man-made chemicals, are dangerous anyway. And they're very hit or miss anyway. But I also believe that I know now that my depression, quote unquote, was situational, which is different than what a lot of people who have depression actually experience. Mine was circumstantial. Yours was, sounds like all of ours. I mean, we had traumatic things happen, and before that we were okay, and then we had this happen, and now we're not okay. So it's a circumstance, and you have to deal with that thing before you can, you have to move through it. You can't go around it. But it's scary. You can't control it. You can't control how you feel. You can't control all these other people and all the craziness that they're adding to the situation. And so it was so overwhelming. But when I finally did face it, like I said, I did it the slow way, which means I didn't take medicine. I tried. It made me feel worse. It made me feel really scary, like suicidal scary, down in a darker place. So I went right back off of it. But I went to therapy, and I went to therapy every week for a couple of years, and I had the benefit of the most amazing therapist who just really helped pull me out, or really helped me find my own way out. She didn't do any of the pulling, and that was priceless, because I went through an entire identity crisis over this. It was like, I don't know who that guy is anymore. I don't know who I am. I don't know who he is as my father. So I don't know who I am as a daughter, as a sister, as, as a person. And I've told you about this before. I might have even said this on an episode before, where I said I didn't know who I was, so much so that I started a journal, and I started writing down questions and answers about myself. Like, what's my favorite color? I don't even know right now. I went through I painted my fingernails black for a while, and because I had never done that as a teenager. Right. I mean, I'm like married with children, small children at this point, and I'm going through all this because it was the only, I don't even know why. There was no, it became an action, a pro-action. Every pro-action I could take got me a few inches closer to finding myself and being strong enough to stand on my own two legs again. And it was a couple of years worth of uncontrollable reactive emotions before I felt like I was being proactive, or that my proactions were helping. But I mean, now stuff happens and I'm like, okay, this sucks, but I got this. And it's because I framed it all properly. So instead of framing it like, well, he betrayed me and I don't know who I am, I must be a horrible person because I came from a horrible person, or, instead of all of that, I mean, that's where it was, right? That's where it lands when you're just reacting, because our brains are by nature really mean to us.
They really are.
Aren't they? Like,
they are not our friends.
No, we didn't tell them that was okay at any point, but bad stuff happens in their brains, like, or even good stuff happens sometimes, and we're like, our brains just like, don't get used to it,
yeah.
or,
Oh yeah,
it's really
so it's not
up.
Just you out there.
Yeah.
It's everyone.
So it's working
everyone.
against you all the time, and so you have to take control of. You have to do the work, and it's harder, and it's more uncomfortable, and it's more painful sometimes in the beginning to start taking that control. But once I did that, and I had to reframe, and I'm so glad I did that. I'm so glad I asked myself those basic questions about who I am, because instead of saying, let me go find out, some of it was like, let me decide.
Yeah,
I get to decide right now who I'm going to be because of this and in spite of this and whatever. And I feel like, really every single day since then has been me deciding. It's not me figuring it out or letting it happen to me. Something happens and I go, I'm going to decide right now how I'm going to react to this. Who am I? What kind of person am I in the face of whatever this is? And it's been, a game changer. It's changed my life for the better, because I have had other painful things happen. I did lose a baby when he was 5 days old, and it was so sad, but I do believe that it was my ability to frame things and see everything, not just the bad, in painful situations, that allowed me to see that situation was also full of miracles and hope and kindness and beauty. And it was, and that's a whole other story. That's a different day, but it was all of those things. And I would never have seen that if I wasn't good at getting my feet under me yet. So, it's a lot. I told you it was going to be heavy, but it's what we are all saying. It's like, you have to choose how you're going to let something sit inside of you.
Right.
And it might take a few days or a few weeks or a few months before you get to that place where you feel like you're not being battered by the situation, and you can go, okay, let's sit down and figure out how we're going to frame this. You can't do that in the moment, right? Like, stuff happens and you just react still, of course. But you got to get to the place where you can do that. That makes all the difference, I feel like.
Oh, definitely. Definitely, without a doubt. Well, and it also, it's so rewarding to come through something like, these blindsided circumstances. It's very rewarding to, first of all, to survive them, right? To come through them at all. But then to move on with life and to let life do its thing, and then to have life slap you in the face again, but then to see how much stronger you are, now, like, just to watch your progress or to feel your progress, like, just to exactly what you're saying, Heather, like to get to a point where you're able to acknowledge and accept that these hard, painful things have not only grown you and taught you, but they have prepared you to to walk and move through life with a kind of grace that we probably didn't ever think we were capable of in the first place, and I know for me, my brother-in-law passed away last year from cancer. He was diagnosed in January and he passed away in July. It was a very fast, tragic time for our family. And my little sister watching her lose her husband and all that heartbreak, and he had been a part of our family for pretty much our entire lives, or our entire teenage adult lives. And so he's definitely like my brother. I don't even like saying brother-in-law because that makes it sound like we weren't as close as we are as a family. But when he was diagnosed in January, it was very, very sad and very heavy. But I was able to process and to stand alongside my sister as she processed these very heavy, potential sad things ahead of us in a perspective that allowed me to stay full of love and hope. Like throughout that entire journey of watching him, get sick and brave death, which he did beautifully. He died with such majesty. He died with such positivity and gratitude for everything in this life of his and for his family. And I got to watch that and experience it alongside him and my sister and my family members, in a way that I don't think I would have been able to before I had gone through that season of depression in my life. But it was just beautiful. It was beautiful. It was beautiful in the sense that, okay, another loved one of mine, a very close, deep loved one of mine, who is my sister's soulmate, we're probably going to lose, and it's going to hurt. So what am I going to do with it this time? And I'm human, and I didn't handle all of that perfectly. But I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of how I moved through that season. I'm proud on a personal level because it makes me feel like I've grown, but I'm mostly proud because I got to hold my little sister's hand and say positive, hopeful things to her. And every single word was completely sincere. The entire journey, that whole path, because I wasn't afraid of the loss. And I wasn't afraid of the pain in the way that we are traditionally afraid of the pain. I wasn't really afraid of anything except for maybe my sister's pain, but I got to hold her hand and count our blessings. Like my grandma always says, count your blessings, be so grateful for Matt. That was his name. Be so grateful for the light that Matt brought to our lives. Be so grateful for what Matt got to experience here on earth. Be so grateful for the 4 little kids that Matt and my sister have that get to live on and carry a little piece of him around for the rest of their lives, such a tragic season, but so beautiful. And I really do attribute any of the strength that I had during that time to what I learned coming out of that pit of despair, several years ago. So it's lovely. It's lovely to feel like you're growing, even though we're always going to slip and mess up and we're always going to do things without grace and imperfectly. But there's strength. There's strength in taking one step, no matter what direction that step is going in. There's strength if you're moving,
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the key, exactly what you're saying is we've all been through hard stuff. Everybody's been through hard stuff. And it becomes a matter of, am I getting better at this or am I getting worse at this? And hopefully, we're all kind of cultivating our own wisdom about ourselves and what we need in those moments, and that we can catch ourselves faster and faster and faster. And yeah, totally. Like I had a situation even just last year where I fell into a depression and I had to go real dark. I had to sit in it before I reached my pain point, basically, where I was like, okay, this is enough. I got to start fighting now. Now I have to have this fighting spirit to crawl my way out of it. But I don't think that lasted as long as it could have because of all the work that I've done on myself. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's the beautiful thing is really just to know yourself that way. And, to Heather's point, I think that's so true. The way we frame it is everything. This obstacle, whatever it is not a hindrance to our life until we choose to view it that way. Right. And so I talked about this on other shows before, and I will probably continue bringing it up. But now I make recorded memos to myself. And I have one on my phone that's called, "So you have an obstacle, question mark."
I fucking love yourself memos, dude.
You're amazing.
Because in the circles that I run, when we have an obstacle, the first thing they say is, "Congratulations." And so that's the first thing that's on my memo. It says, "Do you have an obstacle? Congratulations." And I just start woo, you did it. Because here's the thing, and I say this too on other shows, we can look at it as this is happening to me. I'm a victim, blah, blah, blah. But you can also look at it as wait, this is happening for me. Mm. Because think about it. The people that we admire most, these are the people with the greatest character, right? That's what we admire so much about people. Those are the people we strive to be like. But character is not, is not created in a no drama zone.
Right.
Character is forged in the fire of adversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that's why I love it. I have this memo to me that says, congratulations. Now you get to become a better person by going through this challenge, by surmounting this obstacle, and really seeing, like what you were saying, Chelsea, like what am I made of? And showing yourself, and every time just getting stronger. And now you have that pride in yourself, Chelsea, because you handled a devastating situation completely different than you did only a couple of years ago.
Right.
That's huge progress, And the next one that comes along, it's going to be ideally, faster and faster and faster, that we're able to come to that good place. It doesn't mean that, like Heather was saying, it doesn't mean we don't cry. It doesn't mean we don't suffer. It doesn't mean we don't hate the situation. It doesn't mean any of those things. What it means is that we know what to do with it. We understand its function in our life, and we know how to move past it, by moving through it, not by avoiding it, because you can't change anything that you don't face. That's the really important thing.
Are you writing this down? Because I feel like every line she said is a tweetable for like the last 2 minutes. It's like forged in the fire of adversity. That is like one of those workplace posters that you see
Totally.
on the boardroom wall, like with Amanda's face, like thumbs up,
Yes.
Yes. It was amazing.
I wish that were the first time I said it, but I said it a few weeks ago at a presentation I did.
Well, I wanted to ask if it was your quote or if
it is my quote.
It's an original Amanda, guys. Tweet that.
An OA.
I think it's my quote. I'm 99% sure it's mine.
It's also yours now. How about that? That's seriously. And one thing I will say too is, because sometimes, especially if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not there yet, things happen and I still just get tossed around by them. I will say for me that the best test about where I'm at on that track is in the little things that happen that I can't control. Do you guys feel me on that? And like, if you're, I don't know, if when your kid spills something on the floor, do you like want to cuss them out? Or of course we want to, but do you cuss them out? No. See, progress, right? Like the little things, when I can catch because the little things you can catch yourself in the moment. You can a lot easier, a lot quicker anyway. And you can redirect the reactions a little better. So I feel like for me, I don't know, I give myself
it's good
pats on the
exercise.
back.
Yeah.
So, my husband broke the back windshield out of our car 3 days ago.
Sorry, that's not funny.
And, well, first of all, I happen to know it happened in our driveway, and he didn't call and tell me about it till he left the house.
Dylan and I are the same.
He's not an idiot, right?
Right.
So, but he pretended like he didn't tell me when it happened. Like he was calling me as if it had just happened. I let it play for a minute, And he told me about it, and it's pouring rain outside. And I am proud because I went quiet because I in the moment went, okay, Heather, what are you going to do now? It was like spotlight all of a sudden shines on you. Everyone's looking. What are you going to do? I mean, I caught myself that much, so I went quiet. And he's like, are you there? Are you still there? And I'm like, I'm here. I just don't want to talk to you right now. We'll talk about this when you get home. And he's like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I said, yeah, I just can't talk to you right now. I gotta go. And I hung up. And we got off the phone. And I poured a glass of wine. And by the time he got home, like I had already reframed it. I'm like, it's just a windshield. It's okay. Do I really want to have like a knockdown, drag out fight over a windshield? No. It's like, I realized I put it in a perspective that made me not do or say something that I would regret. And I don't know. I feel like I get 10 points for that. I mean,
yeah. Well, definitely. And that's the thing too, is you could have handled it on the phone the way your husband wanted you to and just go through it.
Yeah.
But you knew, no, this is not going to end well if I stay on the phone with you.
Yeah.
So I can't talk to you right now.
And the funny part is he felt so bad. I could tell he wanted me to yell at him. So maybe,
Yeah.
like it was just weird. Like he was almost egging that on. Like, are you sure? Because I did
I can
this.
take it.
Yeah. It's like he had braced himself properly, So, well, so the little things, I feel like, in those moments, I guess I'm more aware. I'm not as overwhelmed, so I'm more aware enough to catch myself and to notice when I catch myself. And those are the times where I'm like, okay, so maybe I'm, because we can't control anything. Like, for real, guys, let's be honest.
Right.
I know this episode is like letting go of what you can't control. Well, guess what? You can't fucking control anything, okay?
Right.
Let it all go, right? But, I mean, we'd like to feel like we can control things a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're like, well, when someone else says something cool, but when I'm in control, like, everything's going to be fine. Nothing's going to throw me off. Yeah. So I know that how much of a lie that is. And I envy, for example, my husband or like Chelsea, because you guys have more of a personality where you can let things roll off you pretty easily, like the little things. And I don't. Shocker, Yeah. So
I love you. I love you with your clenched fists. It's adorable.
Oh God. And so like it's to the point where like this is how aware I am. I started going to my husband as if he's the teacher, and I'm like, let's have a session. Like, school me. Tell me what your secrets are, because I want to learn to become somebody who can let go easier, quicker, painlessly or more painlessly. I'm like, I don't know how you guys do it. Like, you wouldn't have cared about the windshield from the beginning.
No.
So.
but what you're saying, like a big part of that is personality. Like we all have, these preset things in our personalities, but a bigger part of that, just for all people, is it's practice. It's practicing the letting go. Because Heather, like there might be things that that you really hold on to and stuff that I can let go easy. But then there's going to be things that I'll hold on to for dear life that wouldn't even bother you. Like we all have those things, and we have them like every day to some extent. But the more you practice allowing something to happen, like giving permission to the circumstance and reframing your perspective or changing your priorities, or, the more times that you practice doing that, I have to imagine the better you get at it, right? And the more comfortable you get at it until it becomes almost a second language, that you've learned how to speak and learned how to use correctly a tool, right?
Yeah, you're so right. It is. It's totally practice and awareness, like you said, like aware practice. So you can tell what you're doing or what's happening, because it's really about reframing our subconscious too, and that's really hard. So that is practice. We're reprogramming our brains a little bit. So I think we've already kind of said it, but I mean, to spell it out, what are some of the things that we do to feel like we are letting go, or like we are getting our feet back under us faster? Practice is one, we said, right? And awareness.
Practice. I'm a big fan of like the pause, like we were talking about, like you need to not talk to Dylan right in that moment. Like this is recent in my life, because I usually don't like pauses of any kind. I'm all about go, go, go.
Me too. Yeah.
Right? Like, but I think taking a minute, taking a beat, taking a breath, or a few hours or a few days, whatever the circumstance calls for, to give yourself time to feel everything you want to feel. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, a lot of times we want to feel mad, or we want to feel miserable, or we want to feel angry, right? But if you give yourself a little bit of time, space, and permission to feel those things without expressing them, right, in a negative sense, and then come back to your situation and meet it, head on, I think that's, for me, that tends to be really helpful, taking a couple breaths before I speak.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, well, I just want to say that, I think the reason we suffer is because we don't believe that we have the capability or the strength or the power to overcome whatever it is we're facing. And so often we're in this place of hopelessness, right? So for me, I mean, I bring this up all the time, but, I think the biggest thing in my life as far as the practice of finding that hope in those really devastating moments is from chanting. Like that's the entire purpose of chanting, is it's like when you're literally in hell, like your life state is hell, your mind is hell, like you're just like you just want to crawl into a hole and die. And man, I have felt that so many times where I'm just like, oh, I just want to disappear. Yeah. It's so awful, but like just being able to chant, and like kind of bring that strength forward really quickly, is I think the biggest thing for me. And I think too, continuing to have experiences of hardship and being able to overcome them, then you can sort of remind yourself like how tough you really are, how strong you really are. And actually it's funny because I'm sitting right in front of my laptop and I actually have this like cool little drawing of Daenerys from the Game of Thrones. And it's like her face with like the dragons around her. And the reason I have that is not because I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, which I totally am, but it's because of what she symbolizes. And what I love about this is like Daenerys knows who she is. She knows where she belongs. She makes mistakes. She screws up. People get hurt because of her decisions, and she still moves forward no matter what. Yeah. She never gets down on herself because she knows exactly where she belongs. On that throne.
Yes. Well, she knows her power. She's aware that she has personal power. And I mean that in the metaphorical sense. We don't need to have power over kingdoms to have power.
Right.
But yeah, exactly. She's aware of her power.
No, we have inner power. Yes. Mm-hmm. And also, to go forward more with this analogy, she has really amazing people who surround her. And that's also key. Because when you're in the muck and you can't remember, if you can just remember to like send out a lifeline to call somebody so they can tell you. I've done that so many times where I'm like, I know what to do, but I can't remember right now. Can you just tell me? Can you remind me?
You need to hear it out loud.
Yeah, you need to hear it out loud. So definitely having people that love you and support you will be there for you to remind you just how powerful you are and how capable you are to get through this situation.
That's critical.
I totally agree. Yeah. And the most basic thing, which I think we skipped because it's so basic we've forgotten about it because it's in us so much, but that we at some point a while ago just made a decision that we're not going to be victims.
Oh, yeah.
And when all that stuff happened with my dad, I just remember really ultimately it came down to like a fork in the road. And it was that I'm gonna either go be a victim forever of what happened to me, wear it on my sleeve like this really twisted badge of honor, which is what people do when they're victims. They want everybody to know it. They want to reap the benefits of people's reactions to that. They want, people to feel sorry for them, or they want things to be easier because of it, or they want to make you feel the way they feel so they feel better about the way they feel. There's all these, I've like really thought about this a lot and noticed it, because you notice when you're in that moment trying to make that decision, you notice the people in your life that you've met that are victims in an instant. It becomes very clear, all those mentalities that go with it. So you choose, and you're either going to be a victim of it forever, or you're going to, triumph over it. And like I said it wrong earlier, I wanted to add this. I said you can't control anything, and you really can't control anything outside of yourself. But the one thing that we can control is how we feel about it and what we think about it. And so that's really what I think today's discussion was all about, was that's all we can control. And that's the only thing that you really need to control to not get smacked around by this stuff forever. And it sounds easy. It's not, but it is just that one thing. It's that making that decision that you're going to, that you have the right to, and that you're strong enough to. And then constantly that self-talk of like reframing that, this is what this is going to mean to me. It's not going to mean that I lost. It's going to mean that I gained things. What are they? Let's go look for them. Let's find them in this. So that being said, we're going to wrap up, and I want to just go around and let you guys maybe give one last thought. What do you want to leave the honeys with today, Chels?
I think kind of just going off of what you were just saying, I would like to tell all of you honeys out there that you don't have to let life happen to you, because you can happen to life. Like life happens around us, And we choose how we're going to happen to the life that is happening around us, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, try not to forget, try not to lose sight of how powerful your role is in your life. You are the main character. You are the lead singer. And so we each get to choose how we're going to happen to our own lives. And there's great power and possibility in that, always.
I would say that if you're going through something now or tomorrow or a year from now, congratulations! You did it! And also, congratulations, but please don't be afraid of this. Please face it head on, because the sooner that you face it, the easier it will be, the faster you'll go through it, and the stronger you'll become.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. All of it. Completely well said. And really just, I would just say this conversation, everything we shared, our rawness all the time, our vulnerability is really just to let you guys know that you're not alone. And when we have a conversation about what you can't control, we're not talking about the weather or you got a flat tire or, we're talking about real shit. We're talking about the heavy stuff. We're talking about the pain and the trauma, and you are not alone in any of that. And there is no thing that is so big that you can't decide how you're going to feel about it. And when it feels like it is, that's really why we made the Raw Honeys community, so that you have a place to go and people to find who will tell you that you're bigger than it and you're stronger than it. So we're really glad you're here. Stick around.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Raw Honeys podcast. If so, please share it with a friend or post a review. Heather, Chelsea, and I would love to connect with you. Check us out on Instagram at The Raw Honeys, or join our community of honeys on Facebook. Thanks for listening. We wish you nothing but big love.